Howdy again, everybody. This is Doc with Thorofan coming to you with another fun educational segment. And first of all, I just want to make sure that everybody is hopefully staying as healthy and safe as possible. We are all in this together, and hopefully everybody's practicing the proper social distancing protocols. And really, this is the thing that is helping to really blunt that curve and hopefully save a lot of lives in the process. So, we all know it's a little bit of a struggle. We all know it's a little bit of a hardship, but as I said, we'll get through this together, and hopefully everybody's going to come out on the other side much stronger, than we were going in. So again, hoping everybody is staying as healthy as possible out there. Obviously, COVID-19 has basically turned the racing world upside down and on its head, backwards, sideways, any way you can think. And many tracks and jurisdictions have closed, obviously, because of the concerns. And so there's really not a ton to report on per se, when you look at things from a racing perspective. But something that has been out there and some questions that have popped up are in regard to the FBI raids and the federal indictments that have come down against some prominent trainers recently. And there's been some questions out there as to, why can't we just test for these substances? Why were these so secret? Why aren't they able to test for certain substances and things like that? So I figured, while we're all enjoying a little bit of downtime, if we're still enjoying it at this point, what better time to really try to break down a little bit more and discuss drug testing in horses? So, of course, everybody's heard, the main substance that everybody's trying to figure out if Maximum Security had in its system was this TGF 1000, potentially some others too, and things like that. And we'll get to talk about that in a second. But first, I wanted to kind of just go over some basic things as far as exactly how the samples for drug testing are collected, as well as what certain types of tests are run and things like that. And this is going to be on a very, very, basic elementary level, because if I try to even attempt to go in to explain it on a much more detailed level, I'm sure there are tons of toxicologists and chemists out there that would immediately be emailing me and saying,
wrong, 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 you're wrong.
So at the hope of basically sparing me having to deal with those emails and criticism, again, we are going to try to keep this very kind of on the basic level so that everybody has a general understanding, because that's what we're about here at Thorofan, is providing a basic fan education level so that everybody can have the proper information to make informed decisions on their own. All right, so basically you've got your horses that are running, and of course there's a winner in every race, and in all jurisdictions, or should be hopefully in all jurisdictions, the winner is sent to what is known as the test barn or the detention barn, depending on what it's called. And sometimes the second place finishers are, sometimes there's what they call special horses, where the stewards will just kind of pick horses at random that should go for post-race drug testing. And once they reach the test barn there, basically it is a very controlled environment where only certain people are allowed in, normally the trainer and maybe the groom or the hot walker of that horse. And there's a state veterinarian and staff in that barn as well. So what they will do is they'll continue to hot walk the horses out, but they will also work on collecting blood and urine samples from these horses to conduct post-race testing. And this is all done under very, very stringent and strict conditions so that what we call chain of custody is maintained, so everybody knows exactly what happened to that blood sample or urine sample from the time it was taken from the horse to the time that it is spun down, separated, packaged, and then shipped off to the diagnostic testing laboratory. And all of this has to be controlled because we want to make sure that there's no chance for any kind of corruption of a sample or tainting of a sample in that process. So all of that stuff is very, very controlled through logs, through proper procedures, standards of protocols, all of those things that need to be followed when you are dealing with procedures in the test barn. Little fun fact, a lot of people do know the test barn is also known as the spit box, and the reason that terminology is there is because way, way back in yesteryear, one of the things that they actually used to use for testing for certain substances was the saliva of the horse, so hence the name, the spit box. Needless to say, that was not a very accurate testing medium, but it was all they had back then, and so that's kind of what they used for those types of testing. So now we've went ahead and seen how exactly things go on at the racetrack level. Now we're going to move over and take a quick little jaunt and a drive to the testing laboratory where the real fun begins. So now the samples have arrived at the testing facility, and every testing facility is set up a little bit different, but in order to test for, performance-enhancing drugs or any illicit drugs in racehorses, all labs that do this type of testing have to be accredited to a certain level. And all testing labs hopefully maintain that testing level to be able to provide the results to show the integrity of the sport is being maintained and to make sure that the results that they're getting are very valid. And they do this through various independent, unannounced inspections, through getting mystery samples that then they have to run through the same as they would run any other sample and make sure that they're coming out with the proper results, all of that stuff. So what happens once the samples kind of hit the lab is, again, they are cataloged, they are individually labeled, and it's important to remember too that these labs have no idea who the trainer, owner, or even the name of the horses are when they get these samples. It's basically completely blinded to the chemists there and to the lab workers there. It's just based on barcode numbers, and that's to ensure, again, integrity, to make sure that people don't know that, oh, a Triple Crown winner sample is coming through. If I really wanted to screw with it, let me put this in there to mess with it a little bit or something. So they are all blinded. The lab workers have no idea who the horses are. It's just based on barcode numbers. And then, of course, some of the testing begins. And there's a couple of different types of tests that are done on samples, and some of them are more what we call screening tests, some are more called confirmatory tests, or a little bit more detailed tests. And the most common screening one that is done, and what is usually done as a first level, is something that's known as Eliza. And this is an enzyme-linked immunoabsorbant assay. So don't worry about what it all means, as I said, but basically what this does is it uses a whole bunch of different chemical reagents to have certain materials and chemicals attached to the substance if it's there, and then attached to a coloring agent, which then will show up as a positive test through a color change. That's basically the way an ELISA works. And it's not just for drugs. They use these for a lot of different tests. HIV testing sometimes can be done through ELISA testing. A lot of different viruses and bacterial infections. A lot of things can be done through ELISA testing, and it's something that we usually use as a first-line test in these types of situations. Now, if you wanted to get a little bit more specific, then you go into things that we call either chromatography or spectrometry, which uses a lot more, again, very in-depth types of reactions and heating and separating molecules and chemicals out based on their weights and their structures. And then it goes through a detector, and then, of course, the computer works its magic to basically go ahead and figure out exactly what these substances are based on the way they show up on a graph. Usually on a computer, and the researchers and the lab techs know basically what the substances are based on where they show up on this graph and where these certain peaks are and things along that line. That's the easiest way to describe it without going into tons and tons of scientific detail that I will probably screw up in some way if I attempt it. But what's important, and really where the crux of all of this comes down to when it comes to this testing, is the labs cannot test for something that they don't know about. And basically what that means, in order to know exactly how a substance is going to appear on that graph, or in order to develop an ELISA test for a substance, you have to have the substance. And this is where a lot of the problems in post-race testing and even pre-race testing come in, is if the labs don't have a representative sample of the chemical or the substance or anything like that, they can't test for it. You might be able to sort of guess at a structure, but there's no way to definitely know if that structure is going to be the same as the structure of the drug. And so this is where we always say, like, the chemists are always one step ahead of the testers. And this is not just a racing thing. This is throughout anybody who's doping in sports. It's always kind of been this way. And it makes it very, very hard, again, for the labs to try to keep up, which is why, we're moving towards this more investigative, boots on the ground, trying to find these samples so that we can give them to the labs to develop tests off of. And this is why, bringing it all kind of, full circle back to the whole maximum security issue and the service horses, Navarro horses, and everybody is out there just saying, well, can't we just test for this TGF-1000 substance based on, we know what it is, and they do have samples of it. in my personal opinion, and in a lot of fans' opinions and researchers' opinions, that's not good enough. What really needs to be done, if you really want to know if maximum security had the substances that were confiscated in these FBI raids, is you actually have to test the substances that they found in those vials. Many times when people even order things, and you hear stories about this on the racetrack, they order something from overseas, they see something off a website, they order it, and they give it to their horse thinking it's going to be a performance enhancer, and it's nowhere near the substance that it's actually supposed to be. And sometimes labs only find out about that after the fact, because when they're testing for these things, they find these little weird things that pop up. But it all comes back to the idea of, in order for labs to properly test for substances, they need the substance to form a test for. And that is where we are in the racing game right now, is unfortunately because we have gotten down to a level of microchemistry where, chemists can basically alter molecules in these drugs so that the effect will be the same. So it will still have the performance enhancing effect you want, but because some of these tests look for specific peptides or proteins in certain positions or certain types of proteins, they can alter the molecule to the point where that protein won't express itself, or that peptide won't express itself. If it doesn't express itself, it won't test. So you get the performance enhancing effects, but you can't catch it on a test. This is, again, the crux and the battle that the chemists and the testers fight on a daily basis. They need the substances to be able to find these chemicals and be able to test for them. So, I hope that kind of answered a little bit, of some of the questions as to why it's not always as easy as it sounds to just test for these substances. And again, they're looking at doing much more in-depth testing, hair testing now. The big thing that's going to be coming up probably in the next decade are these what they call biopassports, which will work in a totally different way. And maybe we'll cover biopassports and how they're supposed to work on another segment. But I did want to get on here and kind of explain a little bit of the testing process and why it is so vital and so crucial for these investigations to find these substances so that we can test for them in the future and improve the integrity of the game and the trust in the game that has been lacking. And obviously it just took another hit with this FBI raid and indictments that came down, and we've all got to do our part to be able to clean this sport up as much as possible. So if you have any more specific questions about exactly how the testing protocols work, feel free to drop us a line, media@thorofan.com. I'll try to answer them in a future segment. This is Doc for Thorofan, hoping that everybody is staying safe and healthy during this COVID-19 pandemic, and looking forward just as much as everybody else is to the return of regular racing during this, what is sure to be a very interesting racing year and season. And as always, if there are any questions, comments, concerns, or issues that are dealing with the thoroughbred racing industry, for you the fans, the only place to get the most accurate and up-to-date information is right here at Thorofan.